Good morning. Looks like we are live on another Friday edition of Coffee with Rich. While we're waiting for folks to jump on, please like and hit that share button. And if you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Rich Brown. I'm the co-host, co-founder of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Riley Bowman. And if you're not familiar with me, my name is Rich Brown. Like I said, retired Marine Corps officer, former police officer, corrections officer, special operations officer, blah, blah, blah. You can see my bio by checking out AmericanWarriorSociety.com. And Coffee with Rich is brought to you by the American Warrior Show and the American Warrior Society. American Warrior Society, we have everything you need for your self-defense needs, from less lethal to weapons retention. We take you all the way from white belt to blue belt curriculum. And the website, we have medical, we have everything you need for your self-defense, edge weapons, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about our sponsors real quick before we get into the show. Thank you to the 10 folks that are already jumping on. And if you're jumping on this morning, let me know where you're from. I'd love to find that out. And if you're a coin member of the American Warrior Society, please throw your coin number up there as well. Let's talk sponsors, man. We got some amazing sponsors like Precision Holsters, makers of the Ultra Appendix rig, which I wear on a daily basis. Their competition line, which I highly recommend, as well as their tactical belt. Everything you need, Precision Holsters got you covered. Check out the links below to get your discount and free shipping. Mountain Man Medical as well is one of our sponsors. Mountain Man Medical and the American Warrior Society have partnered together, and we have our own branded trauma kit. You can find a link below and go ahead and get that on pre-order. We're just waiting for a couple more components to arrive, and we'll be shipping those out very, very soon. Cool Fire Trainer, as Riley can tell you, ammunition prices are absolutely astronomical. They're coming down a little bit, but for the next foreseeable future, next year or so, we're probably going to be struggling with ammunition availability. In the meantime, you can take your dry fire to the next level with the Cool Fire Trainer. APP Hemp, if you're like me, I'm starting back to a very strong jiu-jitsu regimen starting next Monday, and I'm going to be needing the CBD to help my ailing 52-year-old joints. Century Martial Arts, man, maker of the Bob XL. You want to take your striking game to the next level? Tired of doing cardio on a treadmill? The Bob XL by Century Martial Arts got you covered. You can work on your striking and build a good cardio routine all at the same time. And before I welcome Riley onto the show and read his bio, I'd like to welcome Tony onto the show from Brunswick, Georgia, Gerald out there in Oregon, coin number 952. And if you want to find out what a coin number is, check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Dan from Flowery Branch, Georgia. Jay out there in Hawaii. Good morning, Jay. Coin number 188. Jay's been around for a long, long time. Memphis, good morning, brother. Good to see you. He's coin number 1751. Good morning. And Memphis will be a guest on the show coming up very, very soon. I'm going to give you an opportunity to hit that share button as I read Riley's bio this morning. I know we're a little early, but it's even earlier where Riley is. Riley Bowman is a lifelong student of the pistol, having a desire to carry a pistol for defense since an early age. He went right out and bought his first handgun when he was 21 years old and got a CCW permit to carry it. Riley soon there was a lot more to it than just strapping on a gun. Riley was inspired to seek out greater knowledge and training when he was given the opportunity to become an instructor for a law enforcement agency that he spent 8 years with. Riley discovered his passion for teaching others how to excel at shooting and developing skills that can be the difference in saving lives. In 2016, Riley finally made the plunge into competitive shooting when he signed up for the American Marksman, a national competitive competition designed to discover top talent amongst amateur shooters. Riley surprised himself when he won the Rocky Mountain Regional Championship that sent him to the national finals, where he placed 10th. He started shooting 3-gun and has numerous top 10 finishes and 4th place finishes at major matches. He has since turned his focus to mastering the handgun and competing primarily in USPSA, currently a masterclass carry optic shooter with the goal of making Grandmaster classification in the near future. Riley has had the opportunity of interviewing dozens of top instructors and shooters as the host of Concealed Carry podcast. They've been on the air for 5 years and have nearly 500 episodes. His day job as the vice president of ConcealedCarry.com, one of the top destinations on the web for CCW-related information, training, and products. Riley is married to his wife of 15 years and a father to 5 amazing children. Riley, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on, man. My good friend Greg says, Buenos dias, Rich and Greg is down there in Mexico. Hope you're living the dream down there. John says, hi from Yukon, Oklahoma. Coin number 1919 says, hi, Raleigh Guardian Nation member.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
Yes. Hey, Raleigh, what did your bio overlook, man? That's a pretty lengthy bio, but what did we miss anything?
Yeah, you took that right from my website, which is cool. Um, I mean, there's so many things in a person's life, right? Like, I mean, I could go to your bio and American Warrior Society. It's pretty good bio too, but I know that's not all who Rich Brown is. Um, yeah, like I like reading books, although I don't get as much time to read books anymore, So listen to a lot of audiobooks. I like music. I play the piano.
I didn't know that.
I
Play the
sing. I
piano.
sing pretty decent. My grandmother was uh, well, she's still alive, but she's 90 years old, retired from doing so. But she was a voice instructor, so I got to benefit from that growing up. Let's see. I spent a couple of years in Japan doing a church mission. So I mean, there's just yeah. There's always multiple. It's like the movie Shrek or whatever, right? Where it talks about being like an onion, right? You
Yeah,
start
that's
like
right.
peeling layers off and discovering new things.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I didn't know you played the piano. That's awesome.
Yeah, I got an electric piano just like right on the other side of my computer monitor here.
You know what's amazing, man? I think there's so many people in our community that are musicians. I see that time and time again. As far as a cohort, I think the musicians are overrepresented in our community. Have you noticed the same thing, or is it me?
Yeah, like there seems to be quite a few people I know that play the guitar or that sort of seems like a lot of guitar players and people that like talk about guitars and collecting guitars. And I'm like, that's one thing I don't know a whole lot about.
Well, Carl Wren is a very accomplished pianist, I believe,
That's
right?
true. Yes, he is. Yeah. And sings well too, plays
Hmm.
and sings at the same time. That's something I don't do very well. I either play or sing.
Yeah, I can barely walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Um, excuse me. One of the things that I've been wanting to talk to you about, as far as how how is life going as a firearms instructor, given all the ammo shortages and all this post-pandemic issues, man? Have you seen anything?
Oh yeah. Of course it's affecting everything. Uh, I just was talking to somebody yesterday that was saying that they'd signed up for two different training courses with two different instructors, like pretty well-known instructors actually, and both of those classes were canceled just due to not meeting the minimums in terms of signups. So we see that all over the place. Although, I mean, just recently on Monday, I was in a class with Mike Seeklander and Rob Latham, and
Yep.
pretty good class, full class, great crew of people. So what I've noticed is it seems to be very unpredictable and almost even hard to apply rhyme or reason to, as far as like, why does this class over here succeed and that one not? Um, Again, even from very well-known, well-respected instructors. Of course, it's one thing to have two world champions, like Rob and Mike. So of course that class is going to fill up, right?
Yeah.
But no, in our own business, we've seen a lot of ups and downs over the last year. Fortunately, mostly ups. I mean, meaning that we've been positive over this whole COVID pandemic and everything that's kind of happened and has been associated with that over the last year or so. Um, there was a while there where early on was kind of sketchy, when COVID first kicked off, and uh, actually things weren't going so well for our business for a month or two, but it fortunately came back. I think that was probably true for a lot of people, where I think we were all kind of in that orientation phase of what's going on here and like how do we deal with this, and I think once people start getting used to, I hate saying it, the new normal, at the time, then things start coming back pretty good. But then your ammo thing kicks off. I remember seeing prices jump up, and I mean, it was about a year ago. I still bought a case of ammo for like $225,
Yeah.
And then, but that's the last time I was able to touch that. So,
Yeah.
so fortunately for me, I don't do as much instruction as I'd probably like to do, just because of availability of schedule. I'm either doing stuff with my family on weekends or competing at matches. So I get in a few classes a year, big classes or what I would call major classes. That's aside from like smaller coaching sessions or that sort of thing. And, I just did a class in Idaho last month, and, we didn't fill the class, but we met our minimums and had a great class, a very productive class. So hard to predict, and we got to do the best we can, I suppose. I think that what we're seeing, of course, is a weeding out of both students and instructors, those that obviously aren't as committed to making themselves better or not going to be willing to spend the money on ammunition. They're going to be hard pressed to spend money on a training course when the ammo is as much as the training course, or sometimes even more than the cost of the training course.
Yeah.
And you're also, of course, because of that, seeing probably a good number of instructors that are having to lay down the baseball bats and baseballs for a time while we take a break from things, waiting for hopefully the ammunition market to stabilize some, which I've seen some positive signs the last few weeks, which I think is good. I mean, not anywhere close to where we want to be, but I've been getting more and more in stock notices on ammo. So that's one thing at least, right?
Yeah. Hey, let's welcome some folks onto the show.
Yeah.
And while I'm welcoming people on, I'm going to encourage you to hit that share button. If we hit 45 today, I haven't done this in probably a year and a half, but if we hit 45 live viewers, somebody will win a customized tumbler. I'll put your name on it, American Warrior Society, and ship that bad boy out to you. So I want to hit that share button while I'm welcoming Will onto the show. Says good morning from Missouri. Alan Kelly is on. Says good morning. Coin number 1571. Occupied Virginia. Please hit that share button, folks. Bill says, I don't know about this Riley guy. Does he even shoot, bro? Will says, I collect firearms and guitars. Terry says, good morning from my foggy Arab, Alabama. Jeff is on. Good morning, my brother. Miss Lisa is on, my beautiful bride. Adam is on out there in Jonesboro, Georgia. John says, I still have my 1950s Les Paul guitar. Amazing.
See, I'm telling you, like guns
Yeah.
and guitars go together for some reason.
Yeah, the guys over at our good friends over at Evo Sec, they're all guitar players too. So as far as your passion for competition, so is you've really only been shooting competition for what, the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, about that.
Okay, wow. And why did you decide to make that move?
Well, in the beginning, like as you read from my bio, the way that explains how I just got into it. A friend of mine actually mentioned this American marksman competition, which was filmed and turned into originally supposed to be, I think, a 6-part series, but they reduced it to a 2-part, 2-episode thing, and it was on Outdoor Channel. But I didn't fully understand all of that when I initially signed up. But they're like, "Hey, there's gonna be like this TV show thing and this competition. Go sign up." And and you shot a local qualifier that just determined whether you could go to the regional championship. And I actually had, I think, they had like 4 different divisions, I think, because you'd shoot like, I think it was iron sighted 22 pistol, optic 22 pistol, and then the same for rifle. The qualifier was shot entirely with 22 pistols, or 22 pistol or 22 long rifle, and I had like the top time in whatever division I shot. I think it was optics pistol. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that surprised me because I mean, I'd done a little bit of informal competition, like unsanctioned stuff here and there, but was more of a, just a couple of times and gave it a try and thought it was fun, but, had other things going on in life or whatever. Went to the regional championship, and like it says, I surprised myself by winning the regional championship. It quite literally was like, I was like, I mean, there was like 200, 300 people there or whatever. And when they called my name and said I was the winner, I was quite literally shocked. So that meant that I could go to nationals and with about 30 other people compete for the top spot. And when they stopped placing you, I was 10th, and then they had a shoot off. Okay. So they kept cutting down the field, and I got to the shoot off, but got eliminated in the shoot off. That's how it goes sometimes. So, that was a pretty fun experience. And I was like, maybe I'm better at this thing than I thought. And I'd been taking training pretty seriously. I've been practicing religiously, dry firing, that kind of thing. And clearly it makes a difference. And so, when you're good at something, you tend to like to do it. So I started shooting competitively, and I picked up 3-gun because, hey, what's more fun than shooting 1-gun? Shooting 3. Even against advice of some trusted friends of mine, they're like, you should just try out USPSA or IDPA, or focus on the one thing and then maybe do the 3-gun thing. And I was like, no, I'm going all in. And I really did enjoy that, and learned a lot from doing so. But after a few seasons, while USPSA may get some grief from certain other organizations or people or styles of shooters because of how many rules there are and kind of some of the culture aspects of it sometimes, which to me I thought would be a turnoff, but I've just come to find that I really like USPSA. I love the matches. I love the people I meet at the matches. Some of the rules are weird, but like whatever. It's a game, and it's like any game, you got to have rules and you got to play by the rules. Just like I think there's rules that IDPA has that are weird, and 3-gun has weird rules too. So, but what attracted me to USPSA was I realized there was something I wanted more, and that more was in 3-gun. It's kind of hard to really gauge where you are compared to a lot of the rest of the talent. Like you could go to a major match and finish 90% of Jerry Mitchellek. You're like, oh, okay, well I'm doing pretty well. But there just isn't as much structure, and there isn't as much it's the classification system, honestly, of USPSA that made me go, well, you're either a class shooter or you're not, or you're a master class shooter like I am now. And like that really, there's certainly imperfections with things like classifications, but everybody has to deal with those same, nuances of classification. Like, okay, I'm a master class shooter. Like that means something. And I generally know about where I stack up in the field. And plus, along with that, you can go to a national championship which I did last year for the first time. And like pretty much all the big players are there because it is the national championship. In 3-gun, 3-gun Nation was kind of, trying to become that thing. But even then it was more of a southeast and eastern part of the United States sort of thing. It didn't, we didn't see a lot of 3-gun Nation competitions more out west. And you would have a major match or a national level match, and you still wouldn't see everybody that you cared about in that sport show up to that. So USPSA nationals, like you're going to see the Max Michels, the JJ Rakazas, the Chris Tillys and Shane Coleys and Christian Seilers. And so they're all going to be whatever division it is that they kind of are masters of at that point in their career. Like they're going to be there. And so going to nationals last year was really eye-opening to me to go, okay, this is where I stack up against the best in the nation, and of course many of the best in the world. And so that has been really uplifting for me to go, okay, this is where I am. And now I have a baseline and that's literally what last year's nationals was all about, was like, here's my baseline. So now I'm going back this year, and hopefully, the work we put in over the last year shows that we level that up. Right.
Yeah, I interviewed James Klingerman, who's a very accomplished Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. And he said the same thing. You can go and compete in jiu-jitsu and go against world-class people. I mean, it just like in shooting, you just don't have that. Like I can go to the racetrack and race against, whoever, or play golf with Tiger Woods, or basketball with LeBron James. But in our sport, you really can get out there and
Mhm.
test yourself against the absolute best that there is. And that's what sets our sport, I guess, different from just about anything out there.
Yeah, and it's even true. I mean, what I've noticed too, whether you are more into IDPA versus USPSA, a lot of the top competitors in IDPA also shoot USPSA. Maybe not as many of them in USPSA shooting IDPA as well, but I mean, like I just saw, I was at the award ceremony. I didn't shoot the match, but I was at the award ceremony for the Rocky Mountain Regional where Mike and Rob Latham were also shooting, and Niels Jonasson won the whole thing, and he wins national championships at the on the USPSA national level too. So uh, you know the, that's a cool thing that at least in the sort of the action pistol side of things, you can choose either one of those sports that you prefer, whatever flavor, and you'll have the opportunity at some point if you want to see where you stack up.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit, Riley.
Yeah.
What is concealedcarry.com up to these days?
uh concealcarry.com is always trying to become everything to everybody on a concealed carry level. So there's always a lot going on, meaning that our ultimate goal is world domination in the concealed carry space. Like, we want people to think, oh, concealed carry. Well, where do I go for concealed carry related information, education, products, and training? Well, I'd go to concealedcarry.com. Well, of course, like that's ultimately where we want to get to. Of course, like any small business that is entirely self-funded, it takes a while to get there, and so there's always lots of projects. We're doing very well, and we're very fortunate. I mean, nobody's becoming millionaires anytime soon, but you know, we've grown as a company. We even grew over the last year, even with the whole COVID-19 crisis. Uh, Again, there was a couple months there, and early on, it was like, oh boy, are we gonna have to lay people off? Like, what's this gonna look like? But shortly thereafter, we realized we had a need, and the numbers supported it, and we hired another person. So we actually have grown. We're a company of, I think it's 12 employees, myself and Jacob, the founder, including. Um, and we're proud of the fact that we are a small American business that is based in Colorado here, and support the families of good guys that work for us. And so we got man, again, a lot going on. We're actually, this weekend I'm filming some training videos for our Guardian Nation members. It'll actually be a whole series on holsters and carry positions, and basically it's to flesh out some of our online video curriculum on actually like carrying and concealing a gun. So it'll be really good, I think. So looking forward to when I hop off with you an hour or two later, I'll be in a film studio shooting those videos. Tomorrow we'll be at the range. So yeah, there's always something going on. I enjoy it very much. Our online store continues to grow. We've got a warehouse that started out as something much smaller than it is now. Now it's, we've got like 4,000 square feet of warehouse space that keeps getting more and more product added to it, and that's exciting to see.
Nice. Amy is on. Good morning, Amy. Kathleen is on. Says, morning, coin number 2013 from Santa Fe, Texas. Mark is on from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Guile is on from the Philippines. Please like and share. Thank you to the 20 folks that are watching us live. If you're just joining us, someone shared it. You're like, who are these folks? I'm Rich Bound, co-host, co-founder of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show, and I'm joined by Riley Bowman from concealedcarry.com. And you were a Leo for 8 years, man. What is the state of law enforcement today?
It's a hot mess, is what it is, and it's sad to see, um, because I believe it to be still a profession of honor. Of course, we all know that there's bad apples in whatever field or profession that you may be in, or that that exists out there. but there's still, I mean, so many wonderful, honorable people that serve their communities for various law enforcement agencies across America. And there's a part of me that's relieved that I no longer am involved in that. And I wasn't employed full time in that field. I was, reserve capacity, but enjoyed, giving of my time freely in doing that as I was unpaid. But I benefited from having wonderful training opportunities and also performing training for our agency. But there's a part of me that's somewhat relieved that I'm not involved in that. There's some dear friends of mine that were engaged in protecting the city of Denver, with riots and things going on, like many major cities across the U.S. experienced this last year. And I was genuinely praying for my friends and those I cared about, knowing that every day was a day where harm could befall them. And so, and then we look at where things are going culturally, and culturally and socially, it's moving not in the right direction. Would be what I would say, right? I mean, that we're looking for. I mean, here's how I view it, Rich, is that these servants, okay, yes, paid servants, but they are hired by their communities, right? Because it's your mayor, it's your city council, it's your whether it's county commissioners or whatever. Somebody has to hire a police chief, and that police chief then hires people to assist him, and they are, like, literally those people are on the payroll of your community. They're not the politicians making the decisions. They're not the politicians that were elected to make those decisions. They are paid to do a job, and that job is enforce the law and protect their communities. But we are more and more trying to blame more directly the officers themselves. That in many cases, the blame should rest more with those that created the rules in the first place. And the fact that many officers don't receive the training that they should. Most of us that have worked in law enforcement understand that most of your truly amazing police officers, those that are most prepared to do the job and do the job well, are usually they're usually prepared so because on their own time and own dime, they've gone out to make themselves better in some way. Whether that's paying for their own membership at a BJJ gym, whether that's, traveling the country, taking courses in firearms and tactics and that sort of thing. Most that's been my experience, at least, is that the cops that I would look up to and be like, wow, that dude is really switched on and knows what he's doing, is usually because he's put in his own work to do that well above and beyond what his agency has supplied. And while I don't necessarily think, like, those that care to do an excellent job are always going to put in extra effort somewhere because, they look at their job as a profession and they're trying to become those ultimate professionals in their job. And that's always going to require extra work somewhere in life to get to that level. But, here we're talking about reducing law enforcement agency budgets, whereas, I mean, that's not going to solve anything. We should be really looking at it from our officers need more training. The reason why these tragic things occur, the reason why, somebody is dead that maybe otherwise would be alive, the answer would be to actually provide more and better training. And we're trying to go the opposite direction very fast. And that's not, that's going to be a self-fulfilling, downward spiraling prophecy, making things worse before it gets better. And that'll be a sad realization. I mean, I do think that at some point, like as we do so often in society, we're going to see the tides shift, another direction, when there's enough societal consensus going, pushing and saying, well, this isn't working. We need to fix that now. But it's going to take, things are going to get worse before they get better for sure. So
Mr. Phil Strader is joining us. He says, "Holy cow, Rich Brown is so handsome." Oh,
what
and hi,
does
Riley.
that guy know? What is that guy?
And let me tell you something. Phil knows a handsome man when he sees one. He sees one in the mirror all the time.
Good morning,
Memphis,
Phil.
Yeah, good morning, Phil. Memphis says, "Got to run. Have a great weekend." Joseph is on. Bill says, "Enter the training. Law enforcement people are an extremely small percentage of an already small training community." And I got to say, he's right. And it goes back to something that somebody told me one time. They said, a professional will do what the average won't do on a consistent basis. And if I think back to my time as a Marine, on the weekend, I was competing in judo or squaring my gear away or customizing it to make me a better, fitter, stronger warfighter. When Seeklander and I were police officers together, man, on our days off, we were shooting and training. But again, we were the exception then.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look now, the law enforcement guys that I train with are a very small cohort within their own community. Or is that what you're seeing out west?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that it's sort of always been that way, and I think it'll continue to be that way. I mean, those that care will do what's necessary to truly excel at what they do, right? I mean, we see that in every facet of life. I mean, there's amazing doctors out there, attorneys, teachers, and professors. So there are those that are just there to collect a paycheck, and like, I mean, it just is what it is. It's like the Pareto principle, right? 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be a smaller percentage than the rest of a certain group that are going to do the bulk of the work, the bulk of the development, the bulk of the, new developments and inventions in technology and science. I mean, that's the way life is. We'll never get beyond that. But when we, again, kind of back to what I was saying, that when we have paid professionals on the job that are doing a very critical job, one where people do and will get hurt on both sides, right? I mean, how do we protect our cops better? We give them hopefully better training. How do we protect the people they serve better? I think the answer is also through better training, and not the challenges. And everyone knows, like, it's. And I saw the question from or the comment from Bill, talking about how the higher ups a lot of times are political animals, just like the elected officials that hire those political animals, as he refers to them. The answer is not a political answer, but that's unfortunately how many agencies operate. Is what's the politically expedient answer here to solve this current problem or crisis or public perception or whatever? How we change that? Well, that's a longer topic for another day, probably, unless you want to go that direction.
Well, no, I want to talk. You said something. You said, training. I remember my lovely bride is watching this morning, and of course, we've been married for 32 years, or 33 years. Whoops.
Get it right, Rich.
Yeah. And next month it'll be 33, so I'm off the hook.
Nice.
But what I was going to say is, she will tell you, when I was a police officer, saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to take a week's vacation and I'm going to spend some of our family's financial treasure to put myself through this training course to make myself a better law enforcement officer." And again, from her position, it's like, why are they not paying for that? That's a great question. But I want to come home at the end of the shift, and it's worth it to me to invest in my own training. And that's a doggone shame, because what I see, and I want to throw it back to you, Riley, is we want to throw another gadget at an already gadget heavy cop. And of course, you mentioned the Pareto principle. I'll toss out Hicks law. You got the more decisions you got, the more time it takes to make a decision, right? So the more time in this profession is not a good thing. So I think that the answer isn't another gadget. I would submit it's probably better training. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. Again, the decision that's being made by the higher ups a lot of times is what gets us just enough to uh, afford us some liability protection. Right now, a lot of times it may not necessarily be, when we say liability, not only money, monetary liability, but political liability, right? uh Nobody, no police chief, for instance, no sheriff wants to be on the hot seat for some issue that their officers created, that makes them look bad. It puts their job in jeopardy. uh you know and also it may be a financial incentive as well to throw gadgets and hardware at what is most likely a software issue, to just again buy some liability protection of some form. And so, as long as we continue solving problems that way, we'll never get to the real fix for certain things, for certain issues. But what we see, I'll kind of brag a little bit. My uncle, for instance, is he's a sheriff up in a small county, and well, it's a large county area wise, but relatively small population county in Idaho. And when he came in as sheriff a couple of terms ago now, I think he just got reelected. Was that last year? But anyway, my uncle is actually one of the persons I would credit for teaching me some things early on in my childhood relating to shooting. And we came from a shooting family. My grandfather loved shooting, so all of his sons grew up shooting and learned how to shoot. And then the eldest boy in that family, my eldest uncle, became a cop, became a deputy, and then many years now later became a sheriff. So for him, and granted, shooting is just one aspect of the job, right? But it is a very critical one because it's one where a lot of mistakes are made, unfortunately, in the LE, in doing LE work. And so for him as sheriff, he wanted to inspire his deputies to perform better in that regard. And so he did something very simple and said, look, we're going to go to, what is it, the official name? The It's early, Rich, but there's a national level competition. It's often held in New Mexico. I have a huge range down there just outside Albuquerque. We're going to go to this major national championship, and I'm going to take 4 deputies with me that the agency is going to pay for. You're going to get a paid trip. You're going to get to go and spend a few days, have fun, shoot, compete. But here's how we're going to award those 4 slots. It's going to be based off of qualification and other training performance metrics. So basically, he created an incentive to, and also compared to the previous sheriff, he made certain allotments that didn't previously exist. For you'll get X, number of rounds per month, per quarter, or per year, to use for training and practice. And so it was all about freeing up the resources and providing the tools for officers to get better. And the ones that care enough to do so were like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm going to get free ammo. I'm going to get to practice more. I'm going to have an opportunity to shoot certain tests and qualifications on top of our existing qualification to be considered for the team to then travel to this national championship.
Was it PPC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's a name for that championship, and I can't think what it is right now. But yeah, it's PPC style shooting. So anyway, so almost overnight, like in a matter of a few months, which is relatively short time frame in the LE world, what was witnessed is that qualification scores for the entire agency went up, right? And even for those officers that probably looked at that and were like, I don't care, I don't want to compete, that's not that important to me, I think that what they have seen is still scores are going up because overall the agency as a whole, it like when you create a culture of excellence, like it tends to bring everybody up with you, right? Like you have a few of those at the top, they're like, oh yeah, let's do this. And it tends to bring everybody along with them. There's always there's going to be those lesser motivated folks, but that probably no matter what you do will always be mediocre. But overall, uh, you see an agency like that, qualification scores go up, training goes up, interest goes up. And then for a small agency in a rural part of the U.S., that played a pivotal role. They happen to be in a part of country, like part of their county has Interstate 15 running right through it. Well, there's drug running that occurs on a lot of interstates across the U.S., especially that one. And I think it was in a period of just less than a year that I think they had 4 officer involved shootings that, and I could be getting some of these, I have conversations with my uncle. I don't write everything down like I probably should, but if I get some of the facts wrong, I apologize. But to the best of my recollection, I think there was 4 officer involved shootings in a relatively short period of time. That's quite unusual for an agency like theirs. But that what was apparent was that the performance of the officers in those shootings was likely better than what previously had occurred in officer involved shootings. Hit rates much better, misses reduced, the effectiveness of hits on target, on threat much better, right? So positive results, liability to others limited, right? Meaning fewer misses, that sort of thing, and better safety for officers, having better training, better skill to get those rounds where they needed to go in those critical situations. And all that just from there's probably other changes too made within that agency that resulted in this, but a very small change was very apparently responsible for an increased interest in training and getting better at a critical skill. And thank you, Phil, the National Police Shooting Championship. Thank you.
Yep.
It's like, I'm sure I didn't want to throw it out there if I had it wrong. So like just a small, simple thing can culturally change within an agency quite significantly the view and attitude towards training and practice.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. To your point, was it a rising tide raises all boats?
Mm-hmm.
Another good little metaphor is, water the performance you want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But herein is a bit of a danger, right? They say if you give a 4-year-old a hammer, everything looks like it needs to be pounded. I would also submit if you give a 4-year-old a feather duster and show him where the dust is, he'll go and take care of that too. So
yes.
I guess that's the only thing I would say with our community, the concealed carry community, the self-defense community, whatever label you want to put on it. If you focus too much and become too myopic on the hard skills, whether that's shooting or fighting or whatever,
right,
then the danger is what happens to our soft skills. And a lot of the soft skills are really fuzzy, and people don't really know how to train with that, I would submit. But before I hand that question over to you, let's see here. Will Parker from Montana is on. Good morning, brother. He says, woohoo, Riley. Stephen Washington says, gentlemen, how's it going up there in Michigan? Coin number 2003. And Stephen and Will, I will see you very soon in some classes. My brother Jeff, who is a police officer as well, corrections officer, Marine, and retired Coast Guard officer, he says, military and law enforcement give you the bare minimum, check in the box. As an instructor of law enforcement, I was reprimanded for straying from the curriculum. Yeah, and that's the problem, man. If I saw this as an instructor in the Marine Corps. I don't want to rush a group of privates locked and loaded with their weapons at port arm, and maybe that's what the manual says, but then I have muzzles pointed at each other's heads. I'd rather have the weapon down range. And we see these kind of things again and again. And I would say, you have to push back against the silliness. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah. On the one hand, I understand. I mean, there's a reason why we establish curriculums, right? It's for consistency.
Exactly.
It's for safety. We need to have some reassurance that every individual that's going through that organization's training is coming out the other end with the same level of training that everyone else has. And the problem obviously is that over time things should change. Should improve. Like we should always be seeking for better for better curriculum, right? Like
Right.
tactics change over time, tools change over time, policies, culture, society, socially, all that stuff changes over time, and we need to be keeping up with that. But organizations are slow to do so, and that's a challenge. And I think that police chiefs and sheriffs and other leaders of other organizations, should try to establish a pattern and a culture that welcomes input and welcomes change from within, and to be quick at reviewing and implementing those changes.
Yeah,
But
I mean, look at the Civil War. I mean, 600,000 dead in the American Civil War. And you say, well, why? Well, because we were still doing Napoleonic form of warfare, line and column, when in reality the technology had already leaped forward with the invention of, the rifled musket and the Manet ball. And so
Mhm.
you had guys that the tactics, techniques, and procedures had not caught up to where the technology was. And if it had, we would have had a completely different outcome. Not all those people needed to die, but and then that goes to your point. You have to challenge what you're doing and make sure that what you're doing is keeping up with where we are culturally, where we are with our technology. I mean, look what Red Dot is changing the game, not only in competition but with law enforcement, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing, and that is a change that is it's actually surprising me how many agencies we're seeing move towards that. Again, it is a hardware solution, which I do think that we're always more inclined to implement hardware related ones rather than software ones. But I I think the red dot though is a hardware solution that, for the agencies that understand how to utilize it, and for the individuals that understand how to use the tool, can really, I think for a lot of people, a lot of officers can help inform their software side of the equation. um, I got to a pretty skilled level of shooting a pistol with iron sights before I tried a dot. And what I discovered once I started using a red dot on a pistol was instantly the level of information, like that the dot gave me, right? When we're shooting iron sights, we're looking at two objects moving in relation to each other that are placed on top of a target, and so you got all this stuff kind of floating there and moving. We're trying to keep everything aligned, and 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 you're not actually seeing what the actual movement of the gun related to the target is doing. We're seeing a proportional movement because we're seeing the front and rear sight move in relation to each other, and that's a little bit different than when we see what does that. We move. For instance, if we move, I'll use it as a very specific example. Let's say that you're using a standard like Glock 19 or Glock 17 with like a, what is it, like a 6-inch roughly sight radius thereabouts. Um, if you move that front sight in relation to the rear sight like a 16th of an inch out of alignment at 7 yards on the target, that translates to almost 3 inches. Okay. And so like that can be significant. Now we increase the distance or we increase the misalignment of the sights, like it can be really significant, but it doesn't look like it's that much of a misalignment to us in the sights when we're using iron sights. But on a dot, the dot don't lie. Like we see the dot on the target precisely where that gun is pointing at every moment, at every millisecond in time. We're seeing the potential impact point on the target. We're seeing where that is. Now, for some people, that could be a little bit overwhelming. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like the dot's moving so much, it's shaking so much," and we have, we have to push past that. And fortunately, I think if you just practice with it, and certainly if you take some training courses from knowledgeable people, you can probably get through that a little bit quicker. But you have to just get used to that. Like that's the reality. Your gun was always moving that much. You just didn't realize it because you couldn't see it as well. Now you're seeing every little detail in the movement and orientation of that gun. And so but that also becomes a very powerful thing because once you understand that, it's like, well, wait a minute. when I pressed the trigger, I noticed that the dot suddenly like jumped, like before the gun fired. Like, oh wait, for the first time ever, some shooters that are tuned in a little bit more will realize, oh, I'm actually anticipating the shot or driving the gun, in an anticipatory fashion, uh, to trying to counter that recoil, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, right, and driving that muzzle slightly downward or down and left or whatever. And for the first time ever, they may be seeing that because again, the dot don't lie. I mean, the sights never did either, but again, it's harder to see and harder to recognize. For me, the red dot helped me get a lot better at shot calling than I ever was before with irons. And then now, as I switch over to iron sights from time to time, just to stay sharp and practice the skill of using iron sights, because it's a little bit different, of course. I've noticed that I'm much more in tune with the gun and those sights and shot calling, even with iron sights, as well as with the red dot. And so for me, it's been a big benefit to shoot on the red dot for a time and learn that and gather all the information. I think in dry fire, having a red dot on a pistol can be very valuable as well, because again, you can see every movement in the gun. You can see when you're doing things right and when you're doing things wrong in dry fire as well. But it's on the shooter. They've got to be in tune with that. They got to understand what that information through the dot is giving them, what that means, and how to utilize that. But it comes down to, like, the age-old drill was put a coin on top of your front sight, or put a brass casing on top of your front sight, and then like try to hold that really steady as you press the trigger, right? Now it's about, let's maintain the stillness in my sight picture, especially in that dot, as I press the trigger in dry fire. Like that, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And the cool thing is a lot easier to, like, instead of sitting there and having to like pick up the brass casing or the penny off the floor, I can just keep doing reps and monitoring my sight picture and learning what it truly means to hold the gun steady all the way through the shot process, which is, I think, one of the more difficult skills for shooters to actually master. As our friend Rob Latham says, it's aim the gun, hold it steady, or hold it there on target, right? And then press the trigger without taking it off target. So, I mean, that's like the whole essence of shooting that many shooters don't quite totally figure out. And it's mostly that holding the gun steady, holding it tight, holding it right there on target while we press the trigger. It's hard. It's easier said than done, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Bruce is on. Good morning, Bruce, up there in Michigan. Coin number 480 says, "Good morning, gentlemen." Alan Kelly is a former retired state trooper in Virginia. He says, "Static firearms training is useful for the basics, but reality reveals decision-making, movement, tactics, and equipment improvements. This in turn leads to more advanced training." Agreed. Jason says, "I love irons. I really do, but it is no comparison to the magical sparkle party of dynamic shooting with a dot." Guile says, "I've never tried a dot, always iron sights. My gun is not equipped for it." Well, you gotta get on board, Guile.
Mm-hmm.
Tony says, "Embrace the wobble." Yeah, and that's probably a good way to do it. For a lot of people, man, it freaks them out and their shooting really slows down. Do you see that, Riley?
I think initially it can do so, right? And especially for a little bit lesser skilled shooters as well. For me, I didn't perceive a lot of slowing down, but I think I was kind of ready for the dot in my own personal shooting. Now, the challenge there though is that it's very easy to over confirm your sight picture with the dot. And so as I began pushing the speed a little bit more, I think it did take me a little bit of time to figure out, wait, I can actually, like, just like the dot doesn't allow you to get away with things that keeps you honest, like the dot's either on the target or it's not. At the same time, it also shows you the limits of what you can get away with, because, truly giving a particular target just enough of a sight picture to hit the target, that's really beneficial, but it also shows you just how much is too much, right? How much, because like if the dot's there, it's there,
Yeah.
right? And so figuring out that obviously at further distances, 15, 20, 25 yards, like I'm going to want to see a settled sight picture, right? The dot, I'm going to want to see a dot on the area of the target that I'm trying to hit. But now we get up to closer distances, uh, 15, 10, 7 yards. Like I don't need to see a dot. I can see a streak. I can see a line. And if that streak or line is within the acceptable target area, send the shot. If I'm seeing if I actually see a dot at 7 yards, I'm shooting way too slow, right?
Yeah.
And then at 3 or even 5 yards, I mean, depending on the individual skill the skill level of the individual shooter, uh, I'll tell you, there's a lot of times like if I'm drawing to a 3 or 4 yard target, say on a USPSA stage, like you have a start position, that first target is just like right there. I may or may not see my dot. I'm not waiting for it, but I know that with my grip and my index coming out of the holster, like I just need to see the silhouette, the shape, really what I'm seeing is just the circular window of my optic. It stays within the A zone at that distance, right? If I see that window within the A zone on a USPSA target, send the shot, right?
Yep.
Now, usually because I've practiced and my index is pretty decent, like usually the dot will be there as well, but I'm not waiting for the dot to be there. And then if I'm instantly transitioning over to a 10-yard target, usually, like again, I'll draw to that close one, not wait for the dot, send those shots, but then switch over to say a 10-yard target. The dot's usually going to be there by that point for me. And again, at 10 yards, like as soon as I see that streak enter the acceptable target area, send the shot, right? So the dot truly shows you just how little and how much, like how much you can get away with, and also how much is too much as relates to an acceptable sight picture based on whatever target that you're shooting at. It's harder to figure that out with iron sights for some shooters, and it's challenging to get to where you're comfortable. But I would encourage shooters to experiment with that. See how little you can get away with in terms of a sight picture with a red dot on your pistol. Okay, because that's what training's for. That's what practice is for. Is exploring your own limitations in your skill and what is acceptable to you. And you got to be comfortable with doing that. And again, practice. That's what it's for. So explore those limits and see what you need to see and what you also don't need to see to get the hits on target that you want to get.
Yeah, I'll tell on myself a little bit. I remember the first time that I really ran a red dot hard on an M4, and now we were doing some drills or running out to 100 yards, and every now and then they'd call you turn and fire on the target, and then running in, you'd run and then remount the rifle, and the whole time I'm thinking the wobble was in my mind for the first time seeing it was so extreme. I'm like, these hits are going to be all over this target. It's going to be a mess. And we do this back and forth several times, and we're all smoked. And I walk up to the target, and like you said, they're all in the acceptable area. And I'm like, holy cow! So, it's like you said, with training, you find out what you can get away with. What does an acceptable wobble look like? Mm-hmm. My brother Jeff has a great question. He says, has Riley tested or personally reviewed pistol red dot sights as far as cost and durability?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it's a little bit outside my lane a little bit, because there's certainly people out there in the industry that are way more informed and, like this is their jam, is the whole pistol red dot thing as far as especially the equipment side of it. But in my own personal experience, I mean, I carry a gun with a dot every day. I mean, and I wouldn't do that if I felt like the technology wasn't there to be reliable enough for carry and defensive purposes. I run, and I'll probably get like called out by some people because I mean the industry standard is Trijicon basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
RMR. The SRO has got a pretty good track record now, a little bit less, durable in the RMR, but still very great optic. You've got Holosun that's made great gains in that space. That is, I mean, they're putting out honestly, some really solid optics. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
Chinese made or whatever, but they're putting out some solid. I mean, I remember when I first came across Holosun at a SHOT Show like 6 years ago, and I mean, they'd probably been around for a little bit, but that's the first time I remember seeing them. I mean, you look at how much has changed in 6 years, and I remember the optics that they were putting out 6 years ago. I was like, I didn't take them seriously at that time. Now we're forced to take them seriously because they're putting out some seriously good stuff. I don't run any of those though. So I first got involved in shooting a red dot on a pistol on my Sig Sauer pistols with the Sig Sauer optics. That the very first. I mean, for me, it was, hey, look, there's this P320 in the gun shop window that has a Romeo 1 optic on it, and I bought it and I started shooting it because to me that was a great way for me just to kind of explore that a little bit. I still have that same red dot right here that I'm holding up in my hand, and it still works completely.
You see that, Phil? Yeah.
It feels still on from Sig there. Now the big thing for the Sig optics is that they're not the most durable thing in the world. You drop it, it's going to break. Like it's going to shatter that window. But they came out with the steel shroud, and that's what I run on my carry gun is a Romeo 1 optic. And it's the original one too. It's not even the pro model, because I'm still running it on my original P320 that I bought with an optic that came with that older Romeo 1 footprint. For when did I buy that thing? Probably 4 years ago, 2017. That sounds about right. And so, on the optic that's on the carry pistol that's on my hip or on my waist right now, it's not on my hip, it's appendix position, but you know what I mean, that optic is over 20,000 rounds now, easy, and it's still going strong.
Nice.
So for me, and once I got to a place where I in practice, I had put probably 5,000-6,000 rounds through it, I was like, okay, this thing's working, and it's working pretty well. It's never lost zero. It's never just died on me suddenly. I do have to replace the battery on the Romeo 1 a little bit more frequently than you would with, say, like an RMR or the newer Holosuns. So I replace the battery about once a quarter, so 4 times a year. But it's easy to do. It's right on top. You can screw it. You drop a new battery in, and away you go. So, and I learned where the limit was with that optic because I pushed it, beyond it's probably about 4.5 months in, and I noticed one day that the dot, I was like, that just doesn't seem as bright as it should be. I mean, it was still usable, but it was just seemed less bright. And then I dropped a fresh battery in, and oh, hey, there it's back. Like it didn't just die, like, suddenly and leave me hanging. And of course, you got backup iron sights on the gun too. So like, even if it did go out on you, all right, hey, you draw your pistol and you're looking at your target, and you're like, my dot's not there. Hopefully you're practiced enough that your index is also good enough that you should quickly see, well, there's my front sight, rear sight. My dot should be in the window right now. Oh, it's not. You can make that decision all in a split second. It can happen very fast, and go, all right, time to go to the irons. I mean, fortunately, I haven't had to do that. But I think the dots where we are today is that they are ready for prime time, and they're only going to get better, and they are getting better. I mean, you see things like the enclosed one from, the enclosed emitter 509T from Holosun. Looks like I haven't actually put much time on one, but they look like a phenomenal optic. A little bit chunky, but they're kind of big. They're going to be, if they're going to be enclosed like that. You got the new Aimpoint Acro, the P2 that just came out like 2 weeks ago, maybe. I think the optics are ready for prime time. So, I mean, if you want to play a safe bet, you go with the Trigicons, right? You can go with the Holosuns, the 508s, the 509s, the 507s, even still pretty solid. If you want to play it safe, I think those optics are solid optics. Again, I'm still running the Sig optics that I've had all this time, and that's what I run on my competition pistol as well, and they've been working great. So I'll just keep doing, even though, again, I know some guys out there be like, well, why would you use that when you could use an RMR? I'm a very simple person. Like, I tend to, if something's working, I tend to stick with it until it doesn't work. And I'll tell you, I'm guessing I'm around 22 or 23,000 rounds on that one optic, on a Romeo 1 that is on my carry pistol right now. And why would I change when it has served me well all this time? So, I mean, eventually there's going to come a time where it's going to break, it's going to stop working, because that's the nature of things. And fortunately, I shoot it enough that the likelihood of that occurring in a training session versus for real is far greater. And if it stops working, all right, replace it. No big deal. That's why this one's sitting here, is it's a backup.
Yeah.
It actually is temporarily off of a backup pistol too. So I like having backups for everything. I've got, you've got a backup competition pistol to your main competition pistol. You got a backup pistol to your carry pistol. Yeah.
2 is 1 and 1 is none. If you haven't heard of that, you need to. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to Riley Bowman of concealedcarry.com about what most concealed carriers get wrong or get right. And it's a subject near and dear to my heart, because as my brother will tell you, me and Jeff and Mike Seeklander went and got our concealed carry permit in 1995. And we've maintained those permits for, 26 years now. So it's nothing new to us. And as I talked about on your show, having carried concealed overseas as far back as 1992, man, I've got a list of what people get right and get wrong. What are your thoughts on that, Riley?
Wow. Well, there's hardware and software, mistakes that concealed carriers make, right? So let's start with the software related ones. So obviously there's mistakes that are made with respect to the law. The primary reason why training's involved for a lot of states with obtaining a concealed carry permit is so that the state or the county or whoever the issuing authority is can say, this person probably isn't going to make a major mistake because they went through a 4-hour class or a day class or whatever. And as part of that, they had to be instructed on basically self-defense law, right? The use of force. It's pretty much what it comes down to. And so, but again, like we were talking earlier with law enforcement training, you're going to get the bare minimum. You're going to check off the box, and like, that's all you get. So carrying a gun is a huge responsibility. You do not get a second chance if you make a mistake somewhere, as far as drawing a gun, using force, inappropriate levels of force, or using force the wrong time. Like, you don't get a second chance. You break the law and you're going to jail, and your life is now over. So like, you need to have a realization of how critical it is that you truly understand what use of force means and what is okay. And as much as possible, we need to be aligned both on the legality of things as well as the morality of things. And I find that people that their own personal values and morals align closely with how they're going to use, like, are either aligned with the law or are within the bounds of the law, they're not going to make mistakes because they're not going to do things that go outside their values, right? And the interesting thing is, in today's society, we see a lot of tough talk out there online of people like, well, I would have done this, and I would have done that, as it relates to certain situations or even theoretical situations that come up in various online discussions. And there's a lot of tough talk that, like, people truly think that way. And I'm referring to situations where it's like, well, that dude was stealing my pickup truck, and I would have just shot him, or, that kind of thing. And it's shocking to me how commonplace those attitudes are in various online discussions, where people talk about doing certain things that certainly don't align with my own personal values and morals, because to me, taking human life is a very serious matter. But also don't align with what the law is established that we can do. And so that's the first thing, right? Because nobody wants to end up behind bars because they make a mistake. So the mistake is not actually studying for yourself the law. And it's going to be slightly different for every state because there's nuances, but generally speaking, the actual use of deadly force is fairly consistent, right? There's some major guidelines that almost every state's law is sort of based around. I mean, a lot of that's because of our Constitution too, that sort of keeps all the states generally aligned in that regard. But anyway, that would be the first one. We could go deeper on that, but I'm going to move on to other software mistakes. Would be not simply pursuing training above and beyond what was legally mandated. Now we see more and more states going to constitutional carry, meaning so now there's not even any training mandated by a state, which, by the way, I think is a positive thing. So right now we are at a place where 50% of the United States, and I'm talking the states themselves, so like 25 out of 50 states either require no training to obtain a permit or have constitutional carry. So you have some states, like for instance, like I think Georgia is a good example, where you pretty much don't have to take a class. Like you pretty much just like fill out an application, get a permit. But then you have states like Texas that as soon as Governor Abbott signs that law, it's going to be a constitutional carry state, right? So about half of the U.S. in terms of the states, there's no training required. Guess what? It is all on you now. And I think that's a positive thing. I'd love to see more states join the ranks because when we have arbitrarily established training standards because of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, human beings being what we are, which is inherently lazy, we go, oh, here's the standard, and as long as I check that box, I'm good. No, you're not good. You're not even remotely close to being prepared to use that gun. You just check the box. That's all you did. But because the box exists, that's what human beings are going to do. They're going to human. They're going to be like, okay, just got to do that, and now I move on to the other priorities in my life. I believe personally that when we remove the training mandate, that people are more inclined naturally to be curious and wonder a little more what they don't know, that they'll be a little bit more thoughtful about it. Okay. Yes, of course, there's going to be those people that shouldn't carry a gun in the first place that go, all right, cool, no training required, constitutional carry. I'm going to buy that $10 holster from Walmart and stick my whatever pistol in it and carry and go about my way. But I do believe that collectively, when we look at the masses, there will be more people that go, this is a serious thing, and I probably should look into this a little bit more so than if they were told, like, here's the government mandate. Like, I think you'll see more people over time, especially, that will actually wonder and will seek information and education and training and knowledge relating to what's involved in carrying a gun. So that would be the big thing, though, is pursuing training on your own, in your own time, that is going to cost money. And I would say, too, be willing to travel, whatever that means to you. Meaning that seek out the best quality training, right? Not just, oh, there's Joe Bob down the street here that I happen to know as an NRA instructor, and I'll go take a class from him. You don't know what Joe Bob knows about XYZ, thing, okay, of shooting or tactics or whatever. Get online, research, find out who are the who's in the industry that are vetted, that are respected, that have a track record of excellence and performance. And if that means, oh, I noticed that so-and-so, Mike Seeklander is going to be in a town 4 hours away, in 3 months teaching a class. Yeah, travel that 4 hours and go take that class. If that means, I've traveled as far, I haven't gone that far east, but I've gone to Iowa, I've gone to Arizona, I've gone to Utah, I've gone to Oregon. I feel like I've gone other places, like where I have traveled to those places to take a class, where the travel cost was more expensive than the class. And I know that's a big thing for a lot of people. They're like, whoa, like I'm already paying $400, $500 for a class. Now you're talking, spending 1,000 or 1,500 to, airfare or gas or hotel or food or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. If it's important enough to you and you care enough about the responsibility involved with uh, using defensive tools, then because I would apply this to anything, whether it's getting hand-to-hand combatives training, whether it's taking an OC spray class from Chuck Haggard, who's one of the industry recognized experts on that, and you see that Chuck's a day's drive away, like go take a class from Chuck. Like that dude knows his stuff, right? It's going to pay off dividends in the long run. So anyway, that's what I had to say about the software side. Now quickly jump over to the hardware side. Mistakes made are poor choices in quality of equipment. You truly get what you pay for. It's easy to, and people, again, because we're humans and we're going to human being, we tend to want to justify our choices, and we have reasons for those choices. It could be budget related, it could be convenience related, it could be all sorts of things, but you get what you pay for. So if you are carrying in an Uncle Mike's holster using that belt, that floppy leather belt you also bought from Walmart, using, I'm not going to give specific brands of pistols, but you guys know what I mean. Those, like if that's what you're carrying, like your chances are it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be effective. You're going to be slow drawing that gun. And to be honest with you, you're probably making those choices because you don't train enough. Because if you did and you actually practice and dry fired, you'd realize, oh, this sucks. Like I can't even draw my gun very effectively. So like, and it's the little things that, again, like belts, for instance. I've tried so many things through the years, and where I'm at right now is like the best thing ever. I mean, I use an EDC Belt Company Foundation belt, which is optimized for appendix carry more so than like if you carry strong side. It's not as well designed for that. It's really an appendix carry belt, but it's awesome. Like I wish it had existed 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I first, I mean, I probably wouldn't have known about it because I was an idiot like a lot of people are, 15, 20 years ago when I was carrying a gun, but because we learn over time. But it's awesome. Like the belt makes a huge difference in terms of comfort and concealment. Holsters are probably the big, like everyone ends up with a drawer or a box or a bucket of holsters, right? That they've tried over time, over the years. And that's a part of the learning process, is doing things and making mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes, hopefully. And, but we're truly at a time now where like it's like a golden age for holster development and technology. I mean, there are just amazing things coming out in the holster world that wasn't even conceived. It's like 5 years ago, if you'd asked me, well, how much more development can there be in the idea of a holster? Like at the end of the day, like it's a container for your gun that attaches it to your body somewhere that hopefully, that carries it safely. Like it should carry it safely. Like how could you reimagine that any other way? But now we have crazy contraptions like this thing. Like what the heck is this thing?
Right.
But this thing is game changing. I'm talking about, I know you have a holster sponsor, but the Enigma. Okay. If someone wants to just go look that up, like nobody even conceived anything like that a few years ago. It's been in development for a couple of years, so it was conceived, right? But beyond that, like, okay, so what that means is that there are means and methods and ways of carrying a gun that still allow for fast, reliable, and consistent access, and of course being safe, while permitting you to live your life and dress in ways that we never before thought were possible. And like that's really huge. But the big thing is, Do not skimp on your holster choice. And most beginning concealed carriers, mostly because we don't know what we don't know, Dunning-Kruger, right? And by the way, price of a holster does not automatically reflect quality of design and quality of build. I mean, usually the more expensive holsters usually are, I would say, actually made with a great level of care, as far as like how the quality of the actual make, but it's quality of design that matters more. And you've got guys out there designing and building holsters that are also affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect because they just don't know, like, and some of that I'm convinced there's holster builders that don't actually truly carry all day every day. But
Or
if
else they
you
wouldn't make it the way they make it. That's true.
exactly right, but the guys that like truly like live with their holsters and like oh, it might take some of them a while, but they'll eventually figure out what actually works and what doesn't. I mean, I I carry a gun pretty much every day, usually 14 to 16 hours a day, right? And that's just how I am. Like for me, it's easy for me to get up, throw my pants on, throw the holster on, gun, and like I go about my day. I don't think about it again, right? As opposed to, well, when I'm home lounging around the place, I do this, and when I go out in public, I do that. Like my life, again, I'm a very simple-minded person. I'm not all that intelligent, probably. I like keeping things simple and just do the thing that works. So for me, that's a pair of jeans, uh, my holsters on my belt, and like I just do my thing. And the way I carry and what I use affords great comfort all day long, and like, and that's because it took a lot of times, a lot of iterations for me to figure out the design principles of a holster that actually make it work, comfort wise and concealment wise. And so, yeah, like, I carry appendix, and I have carried for 33, 34 hours straight on a cross country drive, completely not thinking about my gun and holster because I'm comfortable. Like, but guys will be like, how is that possible? How do you do that? It's the whole package. It's having the right belt, a comfortable belt that works properly. It's about the holster equipment. It's about the gun choice. Okay, trying to carry a short barreled P365 appendix in a holster that's exactly that shape, probably not going to work for you if you got a little, extra something on your belly there. Okay, a dad bod, a little extra flab, whatever, because that little short barreled gun is out of balance. Like it wants to push away from the body, the upper part of it, right? Because you got more holster or more gun sticking above the belt than you do below the belt. You need to stabilize that somehow, right? So the biggest mistake I made for a long time was thinking I needed a small gun to carry concealed. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying that people don't do it. I'm just saying that for me and for my body type and carrying the way I do now, like the P365 wasn't the answer, at least in a holster that was designed for its size. I've got a holster here that is artificially longer than a P365 because it takes that extra length for it to actually conceal well and be comfortable. Because when you got that short barrel, you got less gun below the belt line, more gun above the belt line. It wants to do this, and that actually increases the pressure point of where that gun's pushing into your body below the belt line. And that's less comfortable. So for me, finally going to a slightly larger gun, and now, frankly, I carry a full size P320, and I'm completely comfortable. It's stable. It conceals very well. But it took me a long time to sort through those things and kind of challenge my own preconceived assumptions about what concealing a gun really meant. The challenge is that for every person is a little bit different, right? Every body, every body type is a little bit different. Every shape's a little bit different. Like my body is not the same as your body or somebody else's body, and so that's where concealed carry becomes very challenging, but also very unique. And that's an important thing also to understand, is because I think by understanding that can help us make better choices. Once we realize, like, well, I see this guy over here doing that, and then so that must work. That's going to work for me. That's not always the case. There are some design principles as it relates to the equipment that tend to remain true, but there are some applications and actual specific products that aren't necessarily going to be true for everybody, at least in terms of working with and for them. Sorry, I could tend to run long on this stuff, Rich. I can go and go and go. So you
No,
can put the
it's
brakes
good,
on.
man. You hit the wave points, that's for sure. Will Parker says, Raleigh, hoping to meet you in Missoula the week of June the 14th. I'll take you to the best Mexican restaurant in Missoula. And let's see here.
I'd love to meet you up there, Will. I don't know that I'm going to be there around that time.
Yeah.
June 14th. June 14th. Where am I going to be? I'm not going to be in Missoula, brother. So I'll be close to Missoula about 2 weeks after that. I'll tell you that much.
Let's see here. The Supreme Court announced recently that it would hear the New York Rifle and Pistol Association, Inc. versus Corlett. This is the case that, has the potential to transform our understanding of the Second Amendment and could really disrupt the nation's gun laws, man. The case, for those of you that are watching this morning not familiar with that, involves New York State's handgun licensing law, a law that has been in place since 1913, which requires someone who wishes to carry a handgun in public to demonstrate, quote, proper cause in order to obtain that license. So what are your thoughts about the Supreme Court in this, man? A lot of people are really excited. They think it's could go well for us, and some people don't. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I mean, because this is the closest thing in recent history that could truly, that has a chance for getting rid of the whole may issue versus shall issue, right? Yep. Thing that exists, right, in our country. Like the potential for this case is that suddenly the entirety of the United States could become shall issue states. Of course, the thing at issue here is you have a case out of New York where, basically person can't get a permit, right? New York City is like crazy difficult. And I mean, it's virtually impossible. And there's a few other jurisdictions like that. That's always boggled me. Like, obviously we're Second Amendment supporters. So we look at it and it's like, well, the Second Amendment, like, does that not mean something? So like, why should I have to show cause?
Right.
That I have a valid reason, whatever they think a valid reason even means, to carry a gun, right? But that is, the reality of where we are today in certain jurisdictions, right? So I think the current makeup of the Supreme Court looks very favorable and positive in this regard. The current court has also made, already a few decisions like last year. I'm trying to remember what those decisions were, but I remember kind of thinking, well, that didn't go the way I expected it to go. But I do think that we're primed and in the best position than we've been in a long, long time, maybe if ever. I know some people will be like, well, ever really? Keep in mind that I talked earlier about how things change over time. I think that we're in a really good position right now for cases like this. We had the Caniglia ruling just come out not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, which is not necessarily a specific Second Amendment case, but Second Amendment was involved as far as like, this guy had his guns taken, but it was more of a Fourth Amendment issue. But I think that, again, was a positive sign. You actually saw the entire court unanimously rule in favor of Caniglia.
We had District of Columbia versus, was it Heller in 2008?
Yes.
It was another huge one that, they had disenfranchised people. You can't own a handgun in District of Columbia. Well, Supreme Court says, yes, you can. And of course it was based on the Second Amendment and how it's been interpreted since its inception, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you had the Heller decision, you had the McDonald decision, McDonald versus Chicago. This could be another one of those sort of like pillars, if you will, of decisions that could really positively impact the Second Amendment going forward. So, we'll have to see what happens. I think we're well positioned. Back to kind of what I was saying is that keep in mind that it wasn't that many years ago, and by that I mean like, okay, it was more than 100 years ago. Like in the mid to late 1800s, concealed carry was not a thing, and the attitude towards it was quite negative. That just socially and culturally, that's just, I mean, that's how everybody was back then, pretty much. I'm making a broad assumption there, but that was the attitude towards things like concealed carry, because if you were a law-abiding citizen, you carried openly, because that was the culturally accepted norm, right? It was totally okay. But because society has changed over time, and I know people will say, well, it's unfortunate this happened, and I don't disagree with you, but because over time we've gone away from being an agricultural, a more rural, a more self-reliant society, to where openly carrying a gun, like, it was just an everyday tool for a lot of people. We've gotten away from that, and so now open carry is the less accepted norm, right? And so there's really been, in the last 150 years, a huge shift from open carry to now concealed carry is becoming more the accepted norm, right? And so that's brought up a whole host of issues, because back in the late 1800s, there were several Supreme Court rulings that didn't bode well for things like concealed carry as it relates to the Second Amendment. Okay. That's how we ended up with a lot of the restrictions that we have currently anyway in the first place. And so these types of cases, the Heller decision, the McDonald decision, and potentially this New York one, they're all laying a groundwork, a foundation moving forward of what concealed carry might mean in the future. And I know that there'll be guys that'll be like, well, but it should be open carry and concealed carry, and carrying a gun of any type, anywhere, any way, that should always be okay 100% of the time. But we have to deal with the realities of the world that we live in too. I'll say from a tactical perspective, I'd much rather always be carrying concealed. So, I'm not saying I want to see open carry, go away, legally speaking, anything like that. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying that we need to get the the idea and the attitude and the laws as it relates to concealed carry. We need to get all of that figured out, and that's hopefully what this decision will play a part of that.
Yeah, let's hope. Raleigh, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to look into your crystal ball and tell us where you think this nation's headed, not just with Second Amendment issues, but with anything social, cultural, political. What are your thoughts on where we're heading into 2021, 2022, et cetera?
Well, I think it's an interesting time. I mean, and potentially a scary time. I mean, depending on, like, I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't tend to get all like doom and gloom about things to begin with. I always feel like tomorrow will be a better day than today. It can be challenging sometimes to view it that way when we see certain things going the way they are going. And I strive to stay away from getting too political about things. I mean, I certainly have my political beliefs and ideals, but and I'll let most of you guess where those lie. But to be specific, I mean, right now we have an open comment period from the ATF on the definition of frames and receivers, and that is a scary thing, because what they're trying to do is redefine essentially this affects the definition of what a firearm is.
Right.
Because what a firearm is based off of the definition of a frame and a receiver, because that's the important part. It's the frame or the receiver that is engraved with a serial number, and that's what the firearm is, right? They're talking about the P320, that's what I carry, and it's got that internal chassis, that internal folded piece of metal that forms the internal frame. Like, that's the firearm, right? And that's what's amazing about a firearm like the P320 is I can take the whole grip off. I can take all the trigger components, all that stuff out, like the slide, the barrel, all that stuff doesn't even matter. But that one little piece of metal that's inside the gun, that's the firearm, right? And they're basically trying to expand that definition to include more things as being firearms. And that is gonna, I mean, if they are able to actually push that through, that will significantly affect the Second Amendment. And so it's stuff like that. I mean, obviously the current administration is really leading the push and the charge, because these are part of their broader initiatives. They see it as ghost guns bad, right? Ghost guns meaning homemade firearms, essentially, and these kits that have made that a lot more possible. And so must fix ghost gun issue. So we must now expand the definition of what a firearm is. That is very concerning. As it relates to firearm related rights, like the carrying of a gun, the use of a gun, self-defense, I think we're actually in a pretty good time for that. We continually see more and more states pass laws that expand the Second Amendment, not restrict it further. There hasn't been any major restrictions against firearms, except for probably the most recent example would be Virginia, that has passed some laws kind of as a result of some of the mass shootings that they had there. But everywhere else is really expanding Second Amendment rights and gun ownership and gun carrying. That's really positive to see. The courts now, granted, previous administration has deserves big round of applause for putting into. We have to remember that a president of the United States, like we get very focused on the Supreme Court, and that is the Supreme Court. I mean, it is the final resting place for decisions like these. But there's hundreds and hundreds of federal judges that are put in place by a presidential administration that influence and impact legal rulings for generations, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that entire court system. Like we're seeing rulings coming out of, the Ninth Circuit Court, the First Circuit Court, and think, courts that like have been pretty liberal on things like the Second Amendment for a long time. We're seeing more and more of these lower court rulings, federal court rulings that are more favorable than they probably would have been 10, 20 years ago. And then, of course, as we've already discussed, the Supreme Court of the United States is very uniquely and strongly positioned to handle Second Amendment related issues right now. So I think that on some of the firearm regulation side of things, it's a scary time potentially because of what the ATF and the current administration wants to do and wants to try to achieve. I think on the actual like use of force and carrying of a gun side of things, so we're talking on the hardware side of things, kind of scary time. On the software side of things, actually pretty positive. I'm very optimistic about things. Being a little bit more broad than that, just looking at society and our culture at large, kind of a scary time, no doubt about it. I mean, a lot of civil unrest, a lot of uncertainty. I worry about our economy. I mean, we've been suppressed for a year plus now because of COVID. And I think that there are maybe some things on the horizon financially and economically speaking that we can't even foresee. I mean, we almost never can truly foresee some of these things, but I fear that something could be around the corner that just completely just blows us away because we've never quite really been where we are now. There's the things that are setting up our current time. Like, for instance, I think the economy is showing very positive signs of roaring back to life now that more and more states are finally removing more and more COVID-19 restrictions, right? That's a good thing. At the same time, why is it that we are so suppressed on almost nationwide level in terms of things like housing inventory? Like, it's a really interesting dynamic. I remember moving to Denver, the Denver area, a little more than a decade ago, where the housing supply was relatively low, but it's also because it was at the bottom of the market. That was like 2008, 2009, right? I bought my house at the bottom of the housing, boom bust, right? And so there wasn't a ton of houses on the market because nobody wanted to sell because house prices were low. I'm not going to get, people were still upside down in their homes, owed way more on them than they should, and that kind of thing. We're at the complete opposite end of that right now, where at least in our market, and I've seen this in other markets, house prices are extremely elevated. They're perhaps, I think there's kind of like a housing bubble right now in a variety of markets across the US, but we also have a low supply, which means it drives up artificially prices of homes even more. And that's a very, like, that's kind of a new, usually when you have high prices, it encourages people to sell. So you'll see more inventory. But we're not seeing that right now. And I don't know if I have all the answers as to why that is. And it kind of scares me a little bit. Again,
What's yeah, it's a multifaceted causal problem, and one of them could be just the availability of lumber.
yeah, that's a
You
great
know,
point. I mean, like, again, back to
and
why
build
I
new
feel like
homes
there's
right now.
some, yeah, like why I feel
Yeah.
like there's some things that we can't quite wrap our heads around from like a forecasting perspective, as far as like what's around the corner. Are we going to get totally blown away and blindsided because COVID has disrupted so much of normal everyday operations of life? I mean, we see shortages in lumber, we see shortages in medical supplies, we see all these various industries and markets that have been disrupted because of COVID, and that creates a element of unpredictability.
And I'll give you another case in point. This is an odd one, but me and Mike are teaching a class here, and he's like, "Hey, man, let's fly into this city." No, we can't fly into that city. How about this city? And then we'll just drive over. And he's like, "Well, there's no rental cars there either." And then
Mm,
I've got students saying, "I can't find a rental car, so I'm fine flying in. I'm fine paying for everything. Got the hotel, scrounge up some ammo, but I can't get a rental car." So, have you looked into why that is? But here's what I heard, that last year, to stay afloat, a lot of these rental car companies sold off their fleet. And why did they sell off their fleet? Because used cars were at a premium. Why were used cars at a premium? Well, because auto manufacturers were shut down. They couldn't build new cars. So,
hmm
rental car companies had to stay afloat. They saw an opportunity. They sold off the cars. Why are Riley Bowman and Rich Brown discussing this on a self-defense show? Because the economy drives and affects everything. You cannot take your eye off the ball. This COVID thing is going to affect us in ways we cannot, like you said, Riley, cannot even foresee right now. We can even speculate.
hmm Yeah, like the last year has been such a roller coaster ride of everything, and as we've dealt with this pandemic, and whether it's blown out of proportion or whatever, whatever your various people's personal beliefs are on that, I mean, it is what it is, and like we've had to come through it. But I agree with you, dude. Like, I've noticed that very thing. I traveled to the USPSA Area 6 Championship in North Carolina like 2 months ago or thereabouts, a little less than 2 months. And I remember that very same thing. I was like, wait a minute. Normally rental cars are like this much per day. Now it's this much. It's like 3 times as much as what it should be. And this is my first major trip to where I actually had to fly somewhere, rent a car, all that stuff, like the whole shebang, the whole package deal, and I was hotel was reasonably priced, right? The
Mm-hmm.
flights were great price. Rental car, holy smokes, it's
Yeah.
like $450 for like just a couple of days. And I was blown away by that. But I mean, you're spot on. I think in terms of the analysis. I mean, that's how COVID has affected us. And again, I mean, to your point, like that, yeah, that has, I think, in a lot of similar ways, has affected the housing market. Um, but again, there's still just some strange, like what I'm noticing locally here in Denver is that because people are afraid, because there's not enough inventory of houses, people are afraid to sell because they're afraid that they won't be able to find something to move into. Okay, so that just becomes another vicious cycle that continues to perpetuate this weird dynamic of high prices, low inventory. I mean, there's a high demand for houses. There is, the market's there in terms of price. Like, it's the perfect time to sell, except the people, and I'm in the same boat. It's like,
Where are you going to
hey,
go?
I wouldn't mind maybe moving somewhere else, but I'm looking, in maybe some other markets that normally aren't that big of a deal, but I'm like, normally, like in the past, when I've looked at this kind of stuff, it's like, oh, there's all the houses to choose from. Now it's like there's three that meet my needs, right? I need, X number of bedrooms and bathrooms and space, and I'm looking for land or whatever. And it's like, there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
So I'd love to sell, but I can't, because where am I going to go? So yeah. And I think the same is true with cars as well. Yeah, you're exactly right that the used car market right now is very, very, very hot. Uh, and I even kind of looked at it a little bit. I thought about selling my current vehicle, my truck, because I have something else very specific that I'm somewhat interested in, but can't find it. So why
Yeah.
sell my truck? Because I can't find the other thing I'm really looking for.
Well, the other
Anyway.
thing is, and Tony talks about it here. He says, if spending continues, hyperinflation will follow. And
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I
A huge
talk,
concern.
yeah, I talk to my wife about this all the time because everywhere we look, prices are going up
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, and it could be name your thing. And I go, well, is it really the law of scarcity, or is it just the devaluation of the dollar? And I want to talk. Alan's got an outstanding point. He says not only the issues from the pandemic, but the disruptions from the ransomware attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you right now, man, that
We're going to
pipeline,
see more of that.
we're absolutely going to see more of that, Riley. And we really need to take this stuff seriously because they paid millions of dollars on that pipeline hack. And now we're getting hacks on our food supply. We need to treat this exactly what it is. This is a terrorist attack. We're going to hunt you down, drag you out of your mom's basement, and send you to Gitmo, whatever it takes to really get
Mm-hmm.
strong on these, because we cannot be held hostage like that.
Yes. I think every industry and every business needs to be very much cybersecurity aware in industries and spaces where maybe previous, like we tend to be like, oh, that's a safe place. It's a safe industry. Like it's not on anybody's radar necessarily. Like who would have thought to attack a pipeline, right?
Right.
Like that wouldn't have even crossed any. It never crossed my mind. I didn't think about like, hey, there's the possibility for somebody to hack a pipeline computer somewhere and suddenly the whole southeast of the country can't get fuel. Like what? Like I I think every industry and every business needs to be really looking at what those risks truly are and what the impacts can be to their businesses if something like that can happen to them. Now, I'll give you a personal example. A few years ago, while we were at SHOT Show, our site got brute force attacked. Okay, we didn't get hacked. Okay, so I'm careful to put that kind of thing out there. People are like, well, wait, I've bought something from your site. Is my information secure and all this different stuff? First of all, your stuff's not even stored on our site. But anyway, but it was simply a brute force attack. I mean, they were trying to hack into the site. Fortunately, the site security was strong enough to withstand that. However, they were able to shut us down just by overwhelming the server with the amount and the number of attacks.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, here we are at SHOT Show, and for almost 3 days, our site's down because it's overloaded. People can't get on the site. The server can't handle the traffic, right? And every day that was down, like we're not making money. We're not selling product. We're not selling memberships, whatever it is. That was a big time problem, and it was difficult to solve because we're at SHOT Show, right? We're not, we're not in the usual, like Jacob, for instance, who very much overlooks and oversees a lot of the website related stuff. He's not even at his normal computer. He's on his laptop, and he's like, there's stuff I need that's at home, and that sort of thing. And so that was an eye opener for us to be attacked in that way. And we then had to link up with a very expensive web developer and security specialist to implement some things to our site that, again, were very expensive, but were very much necessary. But it never crossed our mind that we would have to be even that on that that level of terms of security. Now, of course, our site and everything is much more beefed up because of that experience. So I think every industry and every business needs to be really looking carefully at that and looking at the possibility of them being the next target. Because again, I'll bet you that pipeline, I mean, yes, I understand they had some security measures in place and certain computers and networks were air gapped or whatever. but hey, something failed somewhere.
Yeah.
So got to be looking out for that stuff.
Yeah, and Terry says our power grid and our dams are vulnerable. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if you have not read Ted Koppel's amazing book Lights Out, you need to, because it will blow your hair back. And
Mm-hmm.
and I know that I've mentioned it several times on the show that my son is a cybersecurity research scientist for a national laboratory, and they are working every single day on this. I can tell you right now. Last question for you, Riley. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Mm-hmm.
I've really enjoyed it, brother. But I got this broad question for you. I look at you as somebody that's interviewed, almost 500 shows. You've interviewed many of the industry leaders in our community. You've reviewed on air innumerable self-defense shootings. I want to ask you, brother, what can the average person do to make themselves harder to kill?
Mm. What can the average person do to make themselves harder to kill? Do something today. I mean, make that decision right this moment. Do something today to make yourself stronger, faster, and smarter for tomorrow. And I borrow that a little bit from, you speak of podcast interviews that I've done. So not too long ago, I interviewed retired Navy SEAL Don Mann,
Hmm.
and that was actually a piece of advice that he gave on the show. I mean, I shortened up and gave it in my own words, but that was essentially what he was saying: was do something today that makes you stronger, faster, and smarter tomorrow. Every day, we need to be working at things in some form or fashion. Uh, if we are being content with where we are, then we are not moving forward. We're not progressing. And so my personal belief is, while certainly we'll be more efficient and we'll have a better direction, and we'll achieve things faster if we have a very specific plan as to what that is. So obviously there's a lot of good to be said for setting goals and objectives and establishing a plan for how we're going to get there. I do believe that, in a general sense, if we simply have the desire internally to never settle for where we are, that it'll just naturally keep us moving forward in some fashion. Again, always better to have a direction and a plan, but just be doing something, right? Like if that means that today you just do one more push-up than you did yesterday, well, guess what? You're going to be stronger tomorrow. If that means doing a 5-minute, which is not much at all, a 5-minute dry fire session today, and you didn't do one yesterday, guess what? You're going to be a little bit faster on the draw, better at handling the gun, whatever it is, a little bit faster at picking up your sight picture, et cetera, et cetera. You'll be a little bit better off tomorrow. If that means getting to the BJJ gym, or you train somewhere else or whatever, like just do 1 minute, one more push up, one more thing today than you did yesterday. And it's gonna, like, it makes a difference, right? And that can be applied in so many areas of our lives, so many areas. The smarter aspect, the knowledge and education aspect. Read something, or maybe watch a quality video. But I still believe in the power of the written word. Read something or listen to an audiobook or a podcast today that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have yesterday. And that, I believe, has great power from a knowledge and education standpoint for tomorrow. Broaden your horizons, try to understand more about the world and the life around you. And that's really, that's what it's about for me. I mean, for a good while now, you know this, and I tend to be very firearm centric because that's my thing now. Like I'm pretty good at shooting, and I'm working at still getting better at shooting. And it's my true passion in life right now. But I got to a place too where I recognized, and part of it's because it was holding me back a little bit in my shooting and match performance. And I realized I'm not as strong as I used to be. I'm not as light as I used to be. And I need to do something about that. And I've made attempts in the past too, but as is the case for all of us, life can get in the way. I'm a busy father of 5 and trying to run a business, and it's sometimes challenging to stay on top of. It's not even so much the commitment sometimes, but just even being able to have the time to follow through on a workout plan, on a diet plan, or whatever it is. But this year I said, no, like I have to lose some weight and I have to get, more physically fit like I used to be. And some of that is because I got to a place in my own shooting performance goals that is like, I will perform better if I'm faster and stronger and lighter. That's part of getting faster. My knees aren't as good as I'd like them to be. Hey, if I take off 40 pounds, my knees are probably going to feel a lot better, right? So I'm happy to say I've lost a little more than 20 pounds in the last 2 months,
Nice.
and I keep working at it, and I'm sticking to a daily workout regimen, now and have done so for about 90 days, which for like that's a huge thing for me, is like actually being able to create the time to do that on a daily basis. It has been a huge challenge, and it's meant that I've had to give up some other things elsewhere in my life. But it's a shifting of priorities, and that's sometimes what we have to do if we have certain objectives we want to achieve.
I agree with you, man. And I can't remember who said it, but I love it. He says, you can't shoot a heart attack in the face,
Yeah.
but you can eat better. You can exercise. And, Mike and I have said this on many podcasts. The best gadget you can buy for your gun is a gym membership for you. So, and not a lot of people in our community like to hear that. I know. And as I get older, and to your point, I have 3 knee surgeries and a screw holding my shoulder together. I don't, it's not as easy as it was when I was in my 20s, 30s, or 40s. It gets harder.
Yeah.
But like you said, you got to do one more push-up today, read, 500 more words in that book, listen to one more podcast, feed your mind, feed your spirit, feed your soul, get your body where it needs to be. I love it. Riley, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. It's my pleasure and my honor. Thank you for having me on, Rich.
And where can people find you?
Concealedcarry.com. Obviously, that's our business website. The Concealed Carry podcast you find on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn. Wherever you find this show, you'll find our show as well. And also, my personal website's RileyTBowman.com, or you can also use LearnTrainShoot.com. It directs to the same place, and that's more for my. Right now it's more training focused as far as like classes that I'm teaching, but I do intend to put some more stuff up on the site down the road as well, just kind of for my own personal endeavors.
Well, thanks, brother. I really appreciate it. Guys and gals, thank you for being on with Riley and I today. We really appreciate you listening and learning with us and sharing your morning with us. And remember, folks, the fight is coming. Be ready.